Hey, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. So I hate to sound clickbaity or like scammy in any kind of way, but the truth is that there really is a big secret to getting the right kind of long-term results out of your strength training program that most people don't get. And the truth is, it's right out there. I mean, it's right in front of your face. And when I tell you what this is in a moment here, you're going to laugh because it is actually very obvious and yet almost no one follows through with it. I would say that when it comes to strength training, there are basically three different kinds of people, okay? Three different archetypes. I'd say the first one is this very small percentage of people who, from strength training, have very healthy joints, great mobility, great posture. Blood work is fantastic, focus, discipline, getting out of bed with energy, etc., etc. All those things to a very small percentage of people who are strength training. Then to a much larger percentage, there are people who really do look great cosmetically. They've got seemingly good muscle balance and they're lean and they're muscular. And yet at the same time, they've got all kinds of aches and pains in their joints. They've often end up having some kind of surgery on usually the spine or a shoulder or sometimes in the hip. They're doing a lot of degeneration to the joints. And they're often putting a lot of inflammation. They're creating systemic inflammation, inflammation in the heart, and they're even having EKG abnormalities as a result of their methods of strength training. So they look great on the outside, but they're what we sometimes refer to as a really attractive corpse, right? And then you've got the kind of people who really just don't get results. Year after year after year, they're sticking to a committed strength program, but it's not personalized and it's not doing for them what it should do. And they still have sluggish posture and problematic joints and low energy, et cetera, brain fog, all kinds of bad things. And they'll keep telling you, yeah, I'm doing my strength program 4 days a week. And you just keep thinking to yourself, if only the time this person was putting in, if only they were doing it in such a way with such a right strategy that they can actually be improving themselves for all the time they're putting in. And so when I tell you here what the real bottom line is, again, it's very obvious. It's just not really discussed. It doesn't get the kind of press and the attention that it should get. And that is your FITT principles. And I'll tell you what those are in a moment. And the guidelines that make up the clinical science world that connect with those FITT principles. Okay. So what I'm saying is the answers really are in black and white. The groups have done the research. The American College of Sports Medicine, to some degree, the American Heart Association, although that's a little bit less about strength training. But there's so many groups out there, the Cooper Institute, that have done the research. They've gone deep in clinical and they've figured out for this person's type of medical history and current level of fitness, here are the things that they should avoid. Here are the strategies they should lean into. And here are the intensities and the durations, et cetera, that are appropriate. The data's there. But almost no one follows it because it's not simple, it's not sexy, it doesn't sound exciting to say, hey, go read these books and then add up all the data and put it together into a strength program. No one really wants to do that except for this very small percentage of people who are doing really well with strength training. So I want to explain to you what we're talking about, especially in terms of FITT principles, FITT. Okay, now that acronym I've mentioned before on the channel, it's frequency, intensity, time, and type. And you want to relate that to every single muscle in your body. Now, there are a few muscles in your body that you're not really going to deliberately train. They're going to get conditioned by way of training bigger muscles and surrounding muscles, and they'll kind of get hit along the way. So those ones you're not necessarily going to really sit down and think about. But for the major muscle groups, you want to think about the frequency, how often, usually how many times per week you're going to train them, the intensity that you're going to be using. Now, that intensity should be a percentage of that muscle group's maximum. Its maximum strength, you want to use a percentage of that. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then the time you should spend, is it 5 repetitions? Is it 90 seconds? Whatever amount of time. And then the type, where we have to figure out which exercise is going to be most clinically appropriate to get the most out of that muscle group with yet the best safety profile possible. So I hope you're with me so far. By the way, if you're enjoying what I'm saying so far, please be sure to click like and subscribe so you can help the algorithm and get more videos like this in the future. Okay, so now let's go a little bit deeper. If you are involved in a strength training program, ask yourself, pick a muscle group, doesn't matter which one, and ask yourself, do I know roughly what the maximal strength from this muscle group is? And if the answer is no, then right off the bat, we have problems. Because you, ideally, if you want to be the kind of person that I've described who gets all the right benefits with minimal risk, what you want to do is you want to know that this muscle group has this maximum strength at this point in time. And of course, that'll change over time. And I want to be training to an appropriate percentage of it. And then when you ask yourself, okay, well, what should that percentage be? This depends on your medical history and it depends on the surrounding joints health. So if we're talking about the biceps, for example, we have to think about the health of the elbow and even to the shoulder to a degree, and even the low back to another degree for supportive work. So we have to consider all that, and then we have to consider your medical history. Okay. Once you consider all those things, there's plenty of guidelines out there. There's plenty of clinical information that'll show us, okay, so given your situation, we should be at 55% of your total strength, or we should be at 75%, 85%, 90% of your total strength. And when you understand clinically, and I realize very few people do, but when you understand clinically, or if you get the right coach to guide you who understands clinically, then we can start figuring out what that intensity should be, at what percentage, and then when that's probably going to change. So for example, with my clients, I might put somebody at 60% of their one repetition max, which is really just means their strength. I might put them at 60% based on a certain medical condition, based on how high up we can get the heart rate safely without risk of injury. All kinds of other factors can go into that, maybe because the elbow itself is problematic in some way. So we might say, okay, we're going to keep to this percentage for now, but after 1 to 2 weeks, we're going to reevaluate and see if perhaps now we've been at things long enough where we can start to bump that number up safely. And I say this, and I know a lot of times people will say to me, they'll say, oh, well, that's okay. If I try something and it doesn't feel good, I'll regress. Well, by then the damage is already usually done. You can't just wait until you run into a wall and then say, let me go the other way. You just ran into a wall. You don't want that. So what the clinical science suggests, it's not my opinion, but it's just the way that things are supposed to be done in terms of fitness science, is that we have a progression that is generally outlined with a time to goal. We have a basic concept as to where your percentage should be for now and where it's going to be over time, where we're going to progress after 1 week, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, based on what we know about your current level of fitness and your medical history and your joint health. And then we just start to look for all the right factors. Are we getting the green light to suggest that, yes, this progression is appropriate? Are we getting the green light that we should bump up our time? Remember, in the FITT acronym, time was one of the T's in FITT. And so should we bump up a couple more repetitions for now? Or actually, do we need to hold off on that until we start to see more ease or better biomechanics or other components that we have to look for? So anyway, I can't get too in the weeds in this video, but for the purposes of this podcast, what I want your takeaway to be is, if you're not getting fantastic results, okay, maybe you look great, but you're having joint pain and your blood work's not great and things like that. Or if perhaps you're just not even getting the cosmetic benefits where you're trying to gain muscle and lose fat and that's not happening. It's fair to say that your strength training program and other aspects too of your total wellness profile are not really meeting those specifics necessary, and that it's time to start doing the right research and figuring out what's going to be best for your joint health and your other medical conditions, your current levels of fitness, and just your overall performance and mind-body connection too. That's another big part of it all. So anyway, everybody, that's the big secret that's out there in plain sight, especially when it comes to strength training. I'm sure you have questions. Please let me know down in the comments. I'll answer every single one of the questions that I get. And as always, everybody, I'm looking forward to your health and fitness success. I've got lots of great information in the description to this video. So you've got affiliate links to some equipment that I recommend. You've got downloads, you've got other videos that I've done in the past that I recommend as well. And you've got some forms that you can complete if you want to get my feedback on what your current methods are, so I can evaluate what you're currently doing and give you some advice that way. So you've got a million ways to get in touch and get my advice. And again, everyone, I'm looking forward to next time. I'll see you then.